Alright, I'm just going to shoot a quick little walkthrough video here on replacing the spark plugs on this 2008 Hyundai Sonata with the V6. 3 of the plugs are super easy to get to, the other 3, well, not so much. But I'll walk you through the process and try to help you with any tips to avoid any mistakes that I'll inevitably make in here. Let me start off by showing the stuff you're going to need. Besides basic tools, you won't need an awful lot, I don't think. Just something to get out spark plugs with and some standard snap wrenches. You're going to want to replace the intake plenum gasket while you're there. You can get either just the top ones, which are the rubber pieces, which is what I did. If you want to get the whole thing, there's a top and a bottom piece in there. These are actually 3 little pieces in here. They're just rubber gaskets that go between the plenum on top and the actual metal intake down below. You'll need 6 spark plugs. The stock type is NGK 7854s, though there are a number of other plugs that'll work, like these Bosch 8100s. I would definitely advise against using any sort of copper plugs, since they have a fairly short service life interval, and you don't want to do this any more often than you have to. And lastly, I got some anti-seize lubricant for this car. I don't usually use those on plugs, but I did in this car, and we'll get to that in a moment. So we'll start off by taking off this plastic engine cover right here, which is just a 10 millimeter, these 4 nuts up there, and then 2 bolts right here. I've already taken those out, as you can see, and then this will come right off. Set that aside there, and then we have, I already have access to 3 of the spark plugs, which are right here. I took this thing off to make it easier to get at the front plugs. So just also 10 millimeter, just take these 2 out, and then the piece will just come right off there. With that off, you can just take a 10 millimeter thing and take off this first bolt right here, and once it comes out, you should be able to pull off the coil right here. And just finish screwing that out. Put your screws someplace where you won't lose them. And this one, you don't even have to really take off this wire. It'll just pop out pretty easily. You can just get it out of the way, and then you can see the spark plug in there. So just take your spark plug tool. I happen to have this one lying around that was in the trunk of my Saab. It seems to be the same plug type here. Okay, I got the first plug out. Now's a good time to inspect it for any signs of strange wear that would indicate an engine problem. In this case, not really so much. Just looks like a normal worn plug. There's some good pictures, diagrams you can find online that show you what various different plugs look like with different engine conditions, but this one just looks like a normal worn plug, so we're doing okay. Okay, I've now applied a thin layer of anti-seize to the bottom of this, which should go up the threads as I put it in. You want to be very careful, though, to make sure that you don't get the anti-seize anywhere down in the bottom here, because if it gets anywhere near the electrode, the anti-seize is conductive and it'll prevent your thing from actually sparking. So just get that on there and drop it back in there. And if you have a torque wrench, that's perfect. Torque it up to spec. If not, well, you'll kind of have to estimate a little bit. Make sure not to over-tighten if you want to be able to ever get these things out. Alright, and with your plug screwed back into place and all torqued up nicely, push this thing back in, make sure you seat it over the plug, and then find your bolt here. I'd recommend doing these one at a time, just to make sure that you don't hook any of the coils up to the wrong spark plugs. I think it would be difficult to do, but just in case, never a bad idea. Put that one back in place, and then you're going to end up doing the same thing for the other 2. The only difference with the other 2 is that since the wires are shorter on theirs, you probably aren't going to have as easy of a time getting them off without removing the connector over here. Don't want to overstress those wires. So what you can do is just put a screwdriver up in here, reach down below, and pull up, and there's a little tab in there that'll come loose. Hope I'm thumbing the right spot. And then once you've had that tab pulled off, you can just pull this off right there, and then it's much easier to just get this whole thing out. Alright, I got the second plug out, and I'd like to show you why I chose to use anti-seize on this car, even though I don't generally do that. You can see at the bottom of this plug here, there's quite a bit of oxidation, some sort of residue in there. I'm not sure if that's from the head itself or if it's from the spark plug, but either way, this one was very difficult to remove, and it kind of felt like it was grinding the entire way. In fact, you can see some of these threads are ground down a little bit. So I got a bit concerned that without it, these plugs might stick the next time around and strip off things inside the head the next time somebody tries to change the plugs. So if you get any indications of that, it's probably a good idea to use some sort of an anti-seize compound. Putting back in the second plug, remember to always be careful that you're not cross-threading any of these. You got to make sure that it goes in very smoothly when you first start off. It shouldn't really give you much of any resistance until the end. I was just about at the end there, because if you cross-thread those, you have a big mess on your hands in terms of cleaning up the head there. So just make sure it's going in straight, and make sure it's not giving you a whole lot of resistance until the very end. And with that all set, drop the coil back in, reconnect your connector here and drop in your bolt, and then move on to 3. Now once you got the front 3 plugs in, you may want to consider starting up the engine if you're new to changing spark plugs, just to make sure that you've done everything right so far before you start jumping into the more serious things. Looks like everything's good so far, and no check engine lights in there. Right, before you jump in anymore, it's always a good idea to disconnect your negative battery terminal here to make sure that you don't accidentally short something out with your wrench while you're working in here. And then the next step is going to be to remove these 4 on the bottom here, and then 2 on the top up here. Then you can take this bracket out of the way by just squeezing on this with some needle nose pliers, and it'll come right off. You can do that the same thing with this one over on this side. Then you want to loosen this thing up here if you take out the one that's right there. And then worry about getting some of these connectors off to get them out of the way. So there's this one here. I'm not entirely sure what all these things go to, but remember where they connect to, basically. Alright, next you're going to pull out the air hose by loosening up this, and another one up here. And mine was pretty stubborn in there. I found it's a lot easier if you just lift up the air boxes if you're changing the air filter. You'll find there are some clips down here that you can get with your thumb. There's one there, oh, I can't even tell. I think it was over here now. Just 3 of those that you can just do with your fingers, and then the air box will come up. And once you do that, it's pretty easy to just pop it right off there. And then you can disconnect this and get your hose out of the way, and you have access to the throttle body. Alright, and then with your hose off there, you should be able to just take this side of it off just by squeezing on this little thing here, move it out of the way, and the hose should come off fairly easily. And then you can take your air hose out of the way, and you have access to the throttle body, which you're going to have to pull off by getting at these bolts up in here. I missed this at first. There's also a 4th bolt for the throttle body right down there, which is actually a 12 millimeter instead of a 10 like everything we've been doing so far. You'll also notice when you pull out the other throttle body screws that they have Loctite on the back of them, so it's probably a good idea to put some more on those during reassembly. Alright, once you get the throttle body loose, you'll see that it's still attached to something down there. I don't think you should actually have to replace that, or remove that rather. We'll find out as time goes on, but I think just disconnecting it from the plenum up here should be enough. So at this point, all that has to be done is make sure that you have a lot of these connectors, especially over on this side, removed from the plenum here. Take care of these hoses like that, same way as the others, just kind of squeeze on them. Or it looks like you could alternately just remove this thing entirely, but it's probably easier to just pull this hose off, just so that you're able to get this piece up out of the car. So you'll have to get off these bolts, I believe, because this attaches to a piece over here. Yeah, because it attaches to this hose. Or cables rather, and then there are also a few more, and I'll find them as we go along. You have these nuts right up, or bolts rather, right up here on top that hold it in place, but there are also, I believe, a few in the back. As I get around and find those, I'll point them out to you. Alright, so now that I've got the intake plenum loose here, let me show you where all the bolts and nuts were. There were these big ones up here. There was one back here, which I'll try to put my finger in. I need a flashlight to do this, don't I? That would be helpful. There's one back here that connects right to there, and that one over there is a 14 millimeter, I believe it was. And that was where these were connected to. You can see those connectors right there. There's like a W-shaped bracket in there. And that was where the bolt was. There was one more over on this side, which you access from the top, and this one was a 12 millimeter, I believe. And then underneath this piece right here, you'll find the rest of them were down in there. You can see where one was there, a couple more over there. I found that it's a lot easier to move this thing out of the way if you disconnect this piece right here that was attached to those right there, also with a 12 millimeter. If you pull those out, you can get enough slack in here to get at all those, and then the plenum should be nice and loose up here. I believe there's also one more hose that... No, that hose doesn't go there at all. I think this should be good to come off now. Okay, and yep, that was it. The intake plenum came up right after taking those out. There was one more bolt that I don't think I pointed out, which was a nut right there. You can see that all these have Loctite on them too, so it may be a good idea to put a little bit of Loctite on during reassembly. There was one more connector, which was this one over here, that I had to take out to be able to swing it up there, and just swing it over toward the driver's side of the car. I suppose that would be the passenger side if you were in a right-hand drive car, but anyway, here it's on that side. And then now you have access to the other 3 spark plugs, and you can just do those the same as you did over here. Might be a good idea, I'm going to in a moment, put some sort of a rag down here to make sure nothing falls down into the intake over there. You don't want any of that. And then up here is where you're going to replace the gaskets, which I'll get to in a moment. But basically, you're here. Just replace the spark plugs as you did with the front ones, and then we'll do reassembly. Alright, for these gaskets up here, you can get them out pretty easily. There's like these little tabs on the end. Just kind of pull them out like that. Set them aside somewhere. There are 3 of these pieces. 1 for every 2 cylinders. So get those out of there. And then you can reach over and grab your new ones. Make sure they're aligned correctly. And make sure my camera's in the right place, of course. And then you should be able to just kind of press them back into there. Probably best to start off with where this thing is to line it up well. Get them in there. Make sure they're in nice and well. And then do the same thing with the other 2, and then that one will be ready for reassembly. As I'm pulling out this plug, you can hear, I guess it's finally, oh there, some of the creaking from the oxidation at the bottom, which is again why I use the anti-seize putting them back in. Make sure to be careful with it, gentle. Make sure you don't break anything, because you don't want to have any of these threads screwed up in there. Make it very difficult to get another plug in there. Okay, so with the spark plugs in and the gaskets in place, it's just a matter of putting the intake plenum back down. Make sure you get it back over these things here, one on either side. There's the one over here, to make sure it's lined up there. And then it's just a matter of putting all the bolts on. Put a little bit of Loctite, and I have one of them here. I'll show you. It looks like the original was red, and I'm using blue here because it's what I have, but I think it should hold well enough for this. So just get a little bit of Loctite on there and drop them in place. And just the reassembly is the reverse of everything you did. Make sure to get all of the little wires and hoses connected back up where they are. I'll try to keep track of anything that might get overlooked otherwise in the process and hit you up with that. Now that I've gotten this back on, I can show you where that 14mm bolt was that you had to remove. I'm shining a light on it right there, and that takes off this bracket over there from the intake plenum. So that's the one that I was trying to point out earlier that was kind of difficult to get to. And just for reference, putting this all back together here, the ones that had Loctite on them where you should use it again are these 2 on top here, and then all the ones that connect it down here. Basically all the 10mm bolts and nuts that you use to put the plenum on had Loctite on them, and then also of course the 3 throttle body bolts that are on top when you get back over to that. And I believe those are all the ones that I saw having Loctite on them that you should use it on putting back. So now with this plenum all sealed back into place there, it's just a matter of reconnecting all these various hoses and connectors and the throttle body. And that should be it. And okay, I've got everything back together here. Got all the bolts back in place. Those over there, that one over there. Make sure you have all the connectors back in. You got this and this one. If you took off any others to get easier access to stuff, make sure you get those too. Didn't have to take off any of these hoses. I find it's pretty difficult to miss any of them. Everything that's disconnected is pretty obvious. Everything can pretty much only go where it goes. It'd be very difficult to accidentally put something in the wrong place, I think. Then make sure you have this air hose back in. You have the air box clamped back down where it's supposed to be. The only hitch I sort of had here was that the 2 of the throttle body screws, I think because of all the Loctite on them, really didn't want to go back in. So I kind of pulled them out and cleaned them off a little bit, and feels like you're over-torquing them, but they ended up going back in alright. It seems like it's down there pretty tightly. So with everything back in place and you're sure about it, then reconnect your battery terminal like I've done here, and then it's time for the moment of truth. You can start up the car. If you've forgotten to connect any cables, you'll probably get a check engine light, and if you've forgotten to check any hoses or you didn't seal the plenum back up very well, you'll probably get a bit of a high idle. Of course, you're going to get a higher idle in general just because it's cold when you first start it up. So take it for a little spin and see if it comes back down. Let's see how it goes. And there we are. Looks good in here. Idle is about where you'd expect it for a cold idle. Give it a good rev or 2. And yeah, looks like everything's worked out in here. So just put on the cosmetic stuff and then you're good to go. Okay, so after that, the only things left to do are those 3 bars that are right about here, here, and here that this top piece connects to. Make sure you can see where one of them has to have this thing plugged back into it. It's not an actual plug, it's just a thing to hold it in place. And there's also the one over here that this thing connects to. And then just a matter of dropping your plastic cover back on and putting in the bolts for it. And you should be all done. about to go take it out for a spin, but I don't anticipate any problems. I think everything's all set there. All in all, this ended up not being as hard as I thought it was going to be, actually. Other than those kind of stuck throttle body bolts, everything went exactly as I thought it would. It would be difficult to miss something you have to reconnect, and only reconnect what you have to get the plenum out of the way. I didn't really time it, and I've been using this camera the whole time, which has added to it a bunch, but I'd say I could probably do it in 2 hours if I were not filming, maybe even less. It's not too bad. So anyway, wish you the best of luck if you're planning to do this yourself, and have fun out there.